I've seen a lot of people posting on how to build portfolio pages and different types of tools that you can use to build portfolios. They're all great tools. One of my favorite tools that I wanted to share is called Webflow. But I'm going to show you in a couple different videos how to build a portfolio page, starting with the big splash screen, getting to know you, kind of who you are, what your job role is as well. So we'll go ahead and get started on that next. All right, welcome back. If you haven't checked out my website already, go ahead and check out learningdojo.ninja. You can find everything related to e-learning developments. You can see different blog posts on previous topics on XAPI, on augmented reality, on SCORM, and other types of topics related to e-learning development. You can also download templates from Storyline. You can download templates from XAPI. You can also get courses on Articulate 360, Adobe Captivate, XAPI Fundamentals, Articulate Rise, Custom SCORM, and HTML5 Video. Now, a portfolio is an important part to be able to present yourself to a future employer or even to just show off your content, especially if you're going to go to some industry conference or something like that. You can point people to your portfolio to see what you've done and kind of your history and previous projects that you can share. Now, there's a couple different elements to a portfolio project. I'm going to go to one that I have right now. This is a portfolio project that I've created inside of Webflow, and I'm going to walk you through in these different series how to create each of these different sections. Now, the first section that we're going to focus on today is this kind of big splash screen section that takes up the full screen, and it has a big, beautiful background. It also has the picture. I'm not sure I would describe that as beautiful, but the picture of yourself and then who you are, what your job role is, and then a short little description there. Now, as you start to scroll down, you'll notice that you have different About Me sections and other sections right here, and then a little section about your work as well, where somebody can go and link off to different pages or link off to other things. Now, Webflow does cost. I do want to throw that out. There is a free account where you can do 2 pages. And most of my students, when I teach them Webflow, I just talk to them about doing all of your projects within those 2 pages. So you can get by with a free account of Webflow, but it does cost if you wanted to add more pages or build other projects. You're limited to 2 projects. So I wanted to make sure that that you were aware of that at least, because not everything is free. Let's just throw that out there. All right, but this allows you to actually go in and make it responsive as well, so you can see how it adapts and changes based off of the screen size. Now, everything that I build and adjust here will actually flow down to the other sizes, and we're going to learn about that. But I'm going to start a new project. So I'm going to go back into my dashboard here, and I'm going to go ahead and create a new project. Now, I could come in and start from one of their portfolios as well, but I'm kind of undoing things at that point when I want to build it exactly my way. So I don't do that all the time. I just go ahead and select from the blank one. Now, I'm going to call this one Jeff Batts Portfolio, and then let's do 3, because I've done this a couple of times here, but I'm going to click on Create Site, and it's going to create the site for me. It's going to start me out with a blank page. And over on the left-hand side is where I can add different elements to this page. I can also add different symbols. If you're familiar with Flash back in the day, they had a really nice feature to be able to have symbols that you can recreate and reuse content. This is a really nice feature, one of my favorites. You also can see the navigator where you can see all the different elements and how they stack up and how they're grouped as well. You have the different pages, which right now I have this home page, and then there's these utility pages that will let people know if they missed their password or 401 as well. But I could build one more page in the free account. Now, I can also come into here and you can even include a CMS, like a database, if you wanted to get that advanced. You can include a shopping cart as well. You can come in and upload all of your media assets, and we'll do that later. And then come into the gear icon about backup. So we'll actually back up your website. Now, over on the top, this is where if you have a paid account or even a free account, you could see the code here. But if you had a paid account, you can actually download the zip and then upload it to your own domain. Or you can even connect hosting here as well and publish it out straight from here without having to transfer any files, which is really nice. You can see the CSS and the JavaScript that gets created as you start to build. Now, if you're ready to publish, you can come in here and hit publish, and it will publish this to my test domain, which honestly is a live domain, so you can actually send that out to people as well. Or you can add your custom domain like I talked about before. Now over on the right hand side is where you can adjust different properties and adjust, the height and the width and the margin and other things like that, which we'll get into. And then you can get into the element settings and then style manager, and then also the different interaction triggers, and if you wanted to get really complex there. I'm going to come back into the styles selector here, and we're going to come back into our body here where we can see all the different elements that we can use. So we have a section, we have containers, we have grids, we have columns, we have div blocks. And one of the nice things about Webflow compared to other ones that I've seen be used is you have ultimate flexibility. You can go in to the code specifically, or over on the right hand side, I love the way that this is laid out with like margins and paddings, and how you can switch it over to flex boxes and grids and other things like that. So just a lot more control and a lot more flexibility. But you have other things like list, buttons, headers, headings, paragraphs, links, others like videos, images. So you can build a lot with your portfolio here. And there's other things that I'm not going to cover, but there is a lot that you can do and a lot of flexibility inside of here. And you can even do like animation. So you can have things fade in and fade out based on where the location is or if they've clicked on something as well. So we're going to create that big full banner. So there's two different types of layouts. We're going to stick with the layouts for now. You always need to start out with at least a section here, and this will kind of create a blank area. If I was to preview this, which you click on the eyeball up on top here, it really shows nothing. In fact, there's really no height to this section. It only gets added inside of Webflow to show you that you can add stuff inside of there. Now, if you wanted the margins on the left and the right, and you wanted your content centered in the middle, you could go ahead and just add a container as well. But we don't want that for this first section. We actually want the entire width and have the background image on the entire width. So what I'm going to do is I just hit Command Z or Control Z if you're on a PC. And I'm going to come back into here and I'm going to go ahead and find some piece of content that I want to add. However, if it's an image that has content on top of it, most likely it's going to be a background image. I could come in here and I can add an image here and then I can make it so content could be placed, but it's a lot of extra steps here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up to the top here and I'm going to go over to my style area and I'm going to come down to this background area. Right now it's set to transparent. If I select this drop down box, I could change it to whatever color that I wanted to. You can have like a solid color there if you wanted to just have a solid color. But I want to actually add an image. So I'm going to click on this plus icon and I'm going to make it a background image. Now I can establish the width and height and kind of where it's positioned as well. But I downloaded this image from pexels.com that I've kind of already cropped how I wanted it to be cropped there. And I want to upload that image. So I'm going to go ahead and click on choose image here. And now it's going to bring up my assets section over on the left-hand side. So these are your media files, your audio files, your video files. And I'm going to go ahead and click on upload here. Now I'll find that image on my desktop here and click on upload. Now it doesn't automatically associate it sometimes. So sometimes I do need to come in here and click it again. Just keep that in mind. Now the height is very small because I actually haven't even given it a height at this point. We're going to come back to these settings. But I'm going to come over to the top here and I'm going to give this a height. Now I could say 800 and it will just automatically add 800 pixels. You can see that by PX here, but it's going to be 800 pixels no matter what the size is. So you can see as I start to go down here, even on a phone, it's going to be 800 pixels. And so you don't exactly want this. You want it to take up the full size, but only the full size of whatever view your device is. And so that's where the viewport size actually comes into play. So if I come over here and I select this drop down box and I switch this over to VH. VH stands for viewport height. Viewport is basically the size of your browser window, whatever size it is. Now I want this to take up the automatic height. And then it will do the auto width as well, just automatically, but I want it to always be 100% height. And so I'm going to come down to VH and I'm going to make this 100. And so now I'll hit enter and you can see that it's going to take up 100% of that viewport. However, we still have a problem because that image is not 100% of this current viewport. And so what that image is going to do is kind of tile itself. And that's kind of a default thing in HTML is images will tile as backgrounds unless you specifically tell it not to. So we're going to come back into this image here. And if you just click on that image, it'll bring up the settings. And I'm going to make this a cover. And I'm going to make sure that it does not tile down at the bottom. So if it does have to expand out, it's not going to tile it. But cover will actually just cover the entire area. So we'll make it a little bit bigger. Now this width and height work great, or I can center this image in the middle. So it kind of, if I want the center part of that image to kind of be the focal point, I can make sure that that is centered in the middle there. So that looks a lot better, but I want to darken this a little bit. So I could actually come in and add another color. So if I click on the plus icon, and then I come down here to color overlay, you can see that it's going to fade that color out. If I expand this out, I can adjust the transparency of that, but it just overlays this color over the image itself. So if I kind of click out of there, you'll notice that I have this color overlay and then I have this image. And then behind that all is kind of that red background that I've created that doesn't really get visible, but if somebody is having a hard time and it's loading the image or taking forever to load the image, that's where they'll see that red color. So I may want to switch it over to kind of a black color or something like that, just in case. But it's always good to optimize your images before, which I have videos on my blog on how to optimize images here. All right, so now we need to place our content in here. So you can see how it takes a couple of steps to get this to even this point. And that's why I wanted to split these videos up into sections, and we're just focusing on this. So I'm going to upload an image, and this is a profile pic that I've already kind of cropped out. I am not going to use this profile pic because it's longer and I want it to be circle. And so if I'm going to circle this, it's not going to work very well because it's just going to have the circle down at the bottom, kind of those rounded edges and so forth. So I need something that's a little bit more square. So this is great. You can adjust this and snag it. You can adjust if you needed to crop it like this, or in kind of just a free editor, Paint or something like that could actually do that. All right, so I'm going to come in here and click on this plus icon, and then I'm going to go ahead and add an image. Now I'm going to choose an image and then upload this image right here, the one that I cropped, and it's going to add that image there. Now it's going to make that image pretty large, so I'm going to go ahead and just kind of resize that. You can drag that and resize it to about the area that I want. Now it is by default HTML places it in the top left-hand side. We're going to center that, but we're going to wait a little bit before we do that. For now, I'm going to come down to this border section with the image selected. I'm going to come down to this border section and I'm going to up the border right here. And you can see it starts to adjust the corners and make them round. Now, if you just use the slider, it only goes up to 20 pixels. However, you can actually come in here and add a whole lot more. So I'm going to just up this to about 100 until I get that full circle. In fact, I can even do 150. Just so that looks a lot better. Just up it until you can see that it looks really good there. Now, if you scroll down, you can also add a box shadow, and this box shadow basically adds a shadow around your image. If you wanted to blur a little bit more, kind of pop it out a little bit more, you can do that. So there's different things that you can do to your image to make it look a little bit better. And now we have that image good to go. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a paragraph text, or just a regular text actually. Let's do a text block, and you can drag and drop these elements as well. You don't have to just click them, you can drag and drop them into the place that you want. Now this text actually doesn't look really good with black, so I'm going to go ahead and just change that to white because we have a dark background, so we wanted to adjust that to white there. This is where I can say, hey, hello, my name is Jeff Batts. And let's bold just so it stands out a little bit more. You can change the font over on the right hand side. Let's go ahead and bold where it says Jeff Batts. So I'm using Arial right now. Let's go ahead and bold that just so it stands out. So you can just remove that formatting. Actually, I'm going to remove that entire, go back to here. And so you can see that it kept the bold because I used it right here. So if you just want individual text or just certain parts of the text, just use the little pop-up over on the left-hand side there. Now we're going to center that text as well, but I want to have a big title, which is going to be my heading, and that's going to just show up right here. So I'm going to say that I'm an e-learning developer. So I'm an e-learning developer. I do a lot more development than I do instructional design, so I'm going to have that kind of stick out right there. Now, let's add one more paragraph text here. So I'm going to come in and add a paragraph text below, and we're going to change that font size to white as well, or maybe like a lighter gray so it doesn't stand out as much. So we have this content kind of pushed over to the left-hand side. We could come over and take this text and we could actually center this text. That's usually what I see people try to do initially, but it won't keep it centered along with the image. We want to have the image centered and we want to have the text centered. In order to do that, we're going to use something called flexboxes. If you really wanted to dive into what flexboxes are, I have a whole course on Pluralsight that just talks about flexboxes. So we're going to come in here and just select this parent, and you have to add the flexbox to the parent. So the parent is basically whatever object, if I come into the navigator here, whatever object contains all these different elements that you want to have centered. And so we have this section right here. So we're going to come in and just come over to the right-hand side, and instead of adjusting this to be a block, we're going to come over here and adjust it to be a flexbox. We have some problems though. You'll notice my image is very large and it's kind of stacking everything horizontally. Well, I can adjust that in the direction. I can have this stack vertically instead, which kind of takes it back to where it was before. But now I have this align and justify that allows me to center it in whatever parent that I selected basically. So I can come in here and have this centered, and you can see the image centers, and then I can come down and have this centered down at the bottom there, and it will center that. Now we still have our text box that's pretty large, so if I select that, I may want to come into the width and say that this is only going to be 50, and then select a drop-down box to %. It's going to take up 50. Sometimes you have to adjust the percentage before you enter in that number, but it's going to take up 50%. So that looks a lot better. Now, if I resize this, notice how it continues to take up 50% and makes it a lot smaller. And you'll notice that this text, we have some problems there as well. And maybe this image needs to be a little bit smaller as well here. And we're going to adjust that, but for the most part, this looks great. If I click on the eyeball, a big splash screen where people can see information about me as soon as they come to this page. Well, I'm going to uncheck that eyeball again. Let's get rid of some of that lorem ipsum text here. Let's just have 2 lines there. And now let's go ahead and preview what this looks like on a tablet in portrait mode here. Well, I can have a little bit more room that I can play with here. So instead of 50%, let's go ahead and say 60% there. So you can see that it will expand it a little bit more, and I can play with that a little bit more. Let's go back to the display here. I also want that text centered. So you can see that text centered right there. That looks great. So I'm going to go back into here. That's still looking okay. Maybe give it a little bit more room. There we go. And then let's go down to the tablet's landscape, and you can see we have a little bit more room to play with here as well. Now notice that whatever I adjust will actually apply to everything that kind of gets cascaded down here. So anything that I change here will get cascaded down to here and get cascaded down to here. That's why you always want to go from the top to the bottom. Now that is a complete opposite mindset of what you hear sometimes of like mobile first, but in this case it works. So adjust your desktop and have it kind of cascade down to the bottom. So now let's go back to the desktop here, and you can see we have a couple different problems. And we don't see this problem until we get to the mobile portrait here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in and I'm going to adjust the size to 32. And we have a little bit of a padding issue where we're not really seeing a lot of the sides there. I can go ahead and adjust this down even more, and you can see that now we have that. Now I could adjust the padding and the margin over here, but in this case this works, and I can come over here and adjust even the size to that, and you can see that it makes it a little bit smaller. And I can do the same thing with the image, is I can just go ahead and just resize the image But the problem, if I do that, notice that if I try to go back, it resized every image. And the reason why is because the image needs to have its own class. And so I'm going to say circle, which basically now differentiates it from other images that we use. And so now if I come down to here with this circle class applied, so now I can actually come in and let's not adjust the size just by dragging it like that. Let's actually adjust the width to be 80% here. Well, that was pixels. Let's go adjust it to percentage there. And now 80%, that's a little bit larger still. So let's do 60%. And you can see that it only applied to that one. So adjusting the size over here, keeping it at auto, but then adjusting the size once it gets down to that breakpoint works here. So now this looks great on a desktop. This looks great on a tablet. This looks great on phone, portrait, and landscape, and it's good to go. So I take each section one at a time, and I go ahead and I lay it out. I position it using the flex boxes, and you don't always use the flex boxes. In the different sections that we're going to cover, we'll explore reasons why you would use a flex box and why you wouldn't use a flex box as well. But this is just one section. We have a lot more sections to choose from. Let me go back into here. We have an About Me section. We have a section where you'll want to display your work as well, that you'll also want it to be mobile responsive. But this is pretty flexible. It did not take me very long to build this nice splash screen. You have a lot more control than you have over other applications that I've seen used. So that's why I wanted to dive deeper into Webflow. So keep an eye out for the other parts of the portfolio building series here. But if you want to check out more videos in the meantime, go ahead and check out my website, learningdojo.ninja. You can check out my blog. You can check out different courses as well on Articulate Storyline 360, Adobe Captivate, XAPI, Articulate Rise, Custom SCORM, HTML5 video, and so forth. So hopefully that was useful for you. And again, stick around for other parts of this series that will be coming out later. Thanks, everyone.